Greetings, I'm Brother Judah, a representative of the NMP Vanguard. We'd like to welcome you to our channel here. And today we want to deal with the subject dealing with the rhetoric of one individual in particular, Marquett Burton, and others. So he isn't the only one, but he was one of the ones recently that I had heard who came out with some rhetoric, traditional rhetoric against Martin Luther King or concerning Dr. Martin Luther King. We want to get into that, and we want to analyze a little bit more the philosophy of Dr. Martin Luther King. And we actually want to begin to do a series on his teachings, because what we have heard in the West, here in America, and more specifically in the traditional schools network, they appear to have this sanitized Martin, where they actually picked out certain parts of his life that they continue to play out over and over again. So I want to examine this a bit, and maybe this will also give us some insight on Martin Luther King. And we're going to go a little bit into the FBI files. I want to investigate this somewhat thoroughly, but we want to continue the argument. So I like to welcome you all to the NMP Nazarene Messianic page, and we are the Nazarene Messianic, or the NMP Vanguard League, and we deal with the Bible, but not as religious people, as you know it nowadays, or traditional religion. And I say that because if anyone was ever take the time to look up religion, they'll find out everybody got a religion, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, that's your religion. But traditionally, how the religion is used, that's not us. Okay, so we approach the world from a scientific, dialectical, and historical dialectical perspective, and we want to investigate some things about Mr. Dr. Martin Luther King today. So bear with us a moment so we can get into this. Bear with us one moment. Okay. So thank you all for who's ever taken the time to tune in with us today. And let's do some investigating here, because there's a lot of things said and a lot of things misunderstood concerning Dr. MLK, Martin Luther King. And we study him, and we also study those who encouraged him also, and who he learned from. So let's look at this a bit, because it's commonly taught among rhetoric, among so-called conscious African Americans or Black people and Negroes. They always huffing and puffing and beating their chests, talking about how Martin Luther King, he said, just stand there and get hit. You got all these people running around with this rhetoric, and we're going to investigate it today, especially this cat we're going to look at today.
Amy came right back and he said,
this cat here, Marquett Devon Burton, I believe. He called himself the saint in the center. And in other words, to the people who listen to him, he's supposed to be somewhat of an intellectual. But if you listen to him carefully, That's not what he is. He have he have a lot of rhetoric. He claimed to be this millionaire. You know, traditionally, what uh, so-called black people are interested in. You know, they interested. Many of them are interested in just money, making money, getting a bag, but very few are interested in real scientific studies, especially studies that will fix not just their own life, but will fix the life of others around them, that will fix the society. They have taken on this selfish nature. So he played both sides of the fence. But I caught something here when he was asked a question, and he want to sit up here and rail on Dr. Martin Luther King. And I want to start with him to show you he's full of rhetoric. He don't know what the hell he talking about, you see. But to those who listen to him, I guess he have a pretty large following. I have heard him a couple of times, but this is an example on why you really can't take people like this serious. But I want you to pay attention to what he's saying and what he's going to do. He's actually going to bring forth a lot of the rhetoric that others say as well. It's traditional. So listen carefully to him as we rebut his arguments, because he don't know nothing about Martin. In fact, this is the same guy who called Malcolm a traitor, which is a whole nother argument, but then argue how well or how good and beneficial Elijah Muhammad or Elijah Poole of the Black Nation of Islam, Black Muslims Nation of Islam, how well and good he was. But yet it was that person, Elijah Muhammad, who refused to tell his Muslim followers to engage in political and civil struggles that will help the people. So, but we may deal with that at another time as we address the Muslims and their rhetoric. But today, I want us to look and listen to what this guy has to say, and let's see if we can rebut some of the things he's arguing. Listen carefully.
Blacks defend degenerates as long as they are black.
Huh. I think there's a lot of truth to that. Now, previously, say 10 years ago, we would defend degenerates, but not of all types. See, we would not defend a Skittle guzzler 10 years ago. There's just no way. But today, we'll defend degenerates of any variety. I agree with you there. Here, as the message I see from Black creators is they mention Black people followed by something negative, okay? Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and Farrakhan spoke greatness into Black people.
So he's going to take this opportunity to respond to philosophy of life, his comment concerning Malcolm X, MLK, and Louis Farrakhan. So he's going to take the opportunity to single out Dr. Martin Luther King. And this is where more of his rhetoric could come in. But this rhetoric in which he's going to spill now is actually a reflection of his mentality. And but let's listen to his rhetoric about Dr. Martin Luther King, and then we're going to look into Dr. Martin Luther King's writings and listen to Martin Luther King himself, so he can put his argument in proper context to show that what this individual is talking is just foolishness. And what anyone else talks about him, you can tell that the rhetoric he's going to talk is simply coming from the traditional school tale institutional teachings of a sanitized MLK. So let's listen and see what rhetoric he's going to talk.
Well, I like this. Let's dig into this. So Martin Luther King was actually a tool of the white power structure. Yes, I'm about to blow your mind. Everyone.
And usually when people don't know a whole lot, they like to talk about how deep they are. I noticed that too. People who think they he think he about to school somebody. He's not about to school nobody. So first of all, he's talking about that Martin Luther King was a part of the white power structure. That's what he's coming out of the door tripping up. He's tripping up already. Let's see what he says next.
Attention. You see, we know Martin Luther King was Martin Luther King was actually a tool of the white power structure. Yes, I'm about to blow your mind. Everyone pay attention.
Yeah.
You see, we know Martin Luther King was a friend of the government. He was absorbed and co-opted into the white power structure. We know that because the government celebrates him. Yes, that evil government.
Now listen to his reasoning. We know Martin was a part of the white power structure and a part of the government because the government celebrates him. That, my friends, is pure rhetoric. What do you mean? You're going to actually get live and go talking to a bunch of people with rhetoric. That's how you know, because they celebrate him. Is that right? Okay. Let's listen a little bit more. Listen a little bit more because I want to read something to you from the white power structure. Okay, I'm going to read something to you from the white power structure out of the FBI files. Okay, now listen carefully.
The one that segregated us, the one. Pay attention. You see, we know Martin Luther King was a friend of the government. He was absorbed and co-opted into the white power structure. We know that because the government celebrates him. Yes, that evil government, the one that segregated us, the one that condoned slavery, that one. That's the same one that gave us Martin Luther King's birthday as a holiday. They co-opted him. Yes, they said, hey, you have a weak message. You have no ideology. And after all, you're a Christian preacher, and we taught you that. So come here, little boy. Come here, boy. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, you're talking nice stuff. And you know what? I didn't like you before. Martin, is it Martin yet? Dr. King. No, we'll call you Martin. You see, Martin, I didn't like you before, but then there's this other one that came out, Malcolm X. See, he's talking about violence, and that's not so good looking. So we'll deal with you, Martin, because you're a good boy. Malcolm, he's a bad boy. So we're going to take care of him using the FBI in a little bit. But right now, let's get the blacks to follow you. Why do we want the blacks to follow you, Martin? Because you're pushing the same religion that kept them in bondage. Why do we want them to follow you, Martin? And it's not only the religion, it's the interpretation of the religion. It's the turn the other cheek. It's the don't defend myself. It's the let's all be of love when sometimes you got to go to war.
And this Negro right here ain't going to go to no war. It gets me, and Martin going to talk about it too. All of these cats who run around, beat their chest, talk about how much you got to go fight and meet violence with violence. Where they at? Where they at? See, a psychological analysis of warfare and even violence need to be had with a lot of people. Once you have that understanding, you can actually understand Martin's philosophy even more, because it wasn't just his own philosophy. He got it from other revolutionaries. Now, first of all, Martin did not bring any of his so-called, in fact, many of the so-called Christians argue that Martin wasn't a Christian. He questioned a lot of beliefs of the Christian ideology that he had come from. That's what he don't know, because he don't read nothing about Martin. Now, he have heard stuff. So he said, well, he wasn't a threat.
We'll deal with you, Martin, because you're a good boy. Malcolm, he's a bad Martin, is it Martin yet? Dr. King. No, we'll call you Martin. You see, Martin, I didn't like you before, but then there's this other one that came out, Malcolm X. See, he's talking about violence, and that's not so good looking. So we'll deal with you, Martin, because you're a good boy. Malcolm, he's a bad boy. So we're going to take care of him using the FBI in a little bit. But right now, let's get the blacks to follow you. Why do we want the blacks to follow you, Martin? Because you're pushing the same religion that kept them in bondage.
Now, that's his rhetoric. Now, I want to go to the white power structures he's talking about. Those of you who realize, well, you could confirm this. We argued this some time ago, but now confirmation is coming because the FBI files have been released on Dr. MLK. And so therefore, you have this other argument rising up condemning Martin because they're arguing he wasn't a Christian. And two, they're arguing that he was a communist. So as he said, they wanted he's arguing the white power structure wanted the black people to follow Martin. and not Malcolm. He's confused about that because he don't know the history on why even Malcolm had left his favorite person, Elijah Poole. But that's another subject. Let's look at the white power structure that he's calling it. In fact, let's look at the FBI, the United States Government Memorandum, August 30th, 1963. August 30th, 1963. Regardless on what he say, this guy, because you got a lot of people with a lot of rhetoric and they politically backwards. They don't even understand how the political world works. They don't even understand social movements, none of that stuff. Tactics, strategy, they're lost because they too busy trying to earn money off of the people. Now, the memorandum, here it is. You can get the files. This is the file, August 30th. August 30th. Let's get the file. Okay? This is what we're looking at today. We're going to look at this file from the white power structure that he's claiming wanted Martin. All right? So let's look at that. I'm going to read to you the second, or should I say the third paragraph. This is a memorandum from Mr. W.C. Sullivan to Mr. A.H. Belmont, August 30th, 1963. Subject, not Christianity. Subject, Communist Party USA Negro question. And we discussed that too. But right now we're looking at the FBI file. And notice what it says. We do not have, and no government agency or private organization has any yardstick which can accurately measure influence, quote unquote, in this particular context, even when we know it does exist, such as in the case of the obvious influence of Martin Luther King and King's influence over other Negro leaders. His influence that he may have over Elijah Muhammad, over Malcolm X, right? FBI concerned. Why? Watch this. It wasn't no one that they wanted to set up as a puppet. These are FBI files. They talking to each other. They was just released. So it wasn't no propaganda to fool nobody. These are the files that they talking with one another. So it says here, the influence, this obvious influence of Martin Luther King and King's influence over other Negro leaders. Personally, I believe in the light of King's powerful demagogic speech yesterday, he stands head and shoulders over all other Negro leaders put together when it comes to influencing great masses of Negroes. We must mark him now. If we have not done so before, as the most dangerous Negro to the future in this nation from the standpoint of communism, the Negro, and national security. They identified Martin as what? The most dangerous Negro to the security of the nation. And here you got this nigga sitting up here talking about, excuse the French, but I'm using it selectively. how he was a part of the white power structure. I'm reading the white power structure, if you want to call them that. Federal Bureau investigation memorandum from Bell to Mr. A.H. Belmont to W.C. Sullivan, August 30th, 1963. They're arguing that concerning Martin Luther King, he is to be noted now, and we must take note of him as the most dangerous Negro from the standpoint of national security, the Negro, and communism. See, it didn't have nothing to do. He wasn't bringing out no religion. This whole idea of Martin was a pacifist, just stand there and get hit, is taken out of context. His whole method, or part of his method of obtaining political power. Now let's listen to this clown. Let's listen to this guy again as he so tries to eloquently discuss Martin. And that's what people get took. They get taken by this stuff. What is the content of what he's saying? It's garbage. He's a part of the white power structure. How do we know? Because they made a holiday after him. Get the hell out of here, man. This is what I'm talking. This is black people's problem. We have to do more reading. We have to do more research. We going off of emotions and rhetoric, and it make us look like a damn fool in front of all of the people, all of the other ethnicities. Listen to him.
Oh boy, come here, boy.
Yeah.
You know what? Yeah, you're talking nice stuff, and you know.
Now we just read the FBI August 30th, 1963 argued that Martin Luther King was the most dangerous Negro, bar none, head and shoulders, he said, above all other leaders, Negro leaders. He was the most dangerous to national security. Why? We teach why. All of this other rhetoric that people hear, Martin, just stand there and get hit. He taught love. Like I said, we teach the Bible too, right? And I'm here to tell you, people may listen to us and they may get turned off by the Bible, but I'm telling you, it's not like how these people saying it. Love in the Bible is not an emotion. It's an activity. It's synonymous with justice. It's the acts of justice. It's not some emotional, like write you a card, love. That's not what the Bible even described it to be. But our definitions of love today cause us to look at love when we read that word in the scripture. Actually, it's come from the Greek word agape. But nevertheless, let's get back to our focus here. Sometimes people make so many errors that I find myself trying to address them all, but I need to focus.
You know what? I didn't like you before. Martin, is it? Martin did us? The one that condoned slavery? That one. That's the same one that gave us Martin Luther King's birthday as a holiday. They co-opted him. Yes. They said, hey, you have a weak message. You have no ideology. And after all, you're a Christian preacher, and we taught you that. So
he said you have a weak message, but the FBI said we must mark him now, if we have not done so before, as the most dangerous Negro of the future in this nation. They co-opt him. Why the FBI writing this behind the scenes?
Oh boy, come here, boy. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, you're talking nice stuff. And you know what? I didn't like you before. Martin, is it Martin yet? Dr. King. No, we'll call you Martin. You see, Martin, I didn't like you before, but then there's this other one that came out, Malcolm X. See, he's talking about violence, and that's not so good looking. So we'll deal with you, Martin, because you're a good boy. Malcolm, he's a bad boy. So we're going to take care of him using the FBI in a little bit. But right now, let's get the blacks to follow you. Why do we want the blacks to follow you, Martin? Because you're pushing the same religion that kept them in bondage. Why do we want them to follow you, Martin? And it's not only the religion, it's the interpretation of the religion. It's the turn the other cheek. It's the don't defend myself. It's the let's all be of love when sometimes you got to go to war.
That's not what he taught at all. Wasn't a part of his philosophy at all. The nonviolent tactic was a part of a movement. And we're going to look at that. It wasn't that you just stand there and get hit like you sitting on your porch some damn where. No, it was a part of an active movement. That's why it's called nonviolent action. And we're going to look at the psychology of it, God willing, in the future. But we also going to look at the practicality of it as well. So again, all these people talking this stuff, where they at with the guns? Where they at? I'm going to show you something else. They got something for you. We're going to address that too. The violent Malcolm, they was ready. They were ready. What do we have here? You see that? The guerrilla warfare advocates in the United States. Report by the Committee on Un-American Activities. We're going to address that too. See, there's a science here that if we're not studying politics, we don't know what's going on. And you make foolish statements and arguments like this guy here. Let's get back to this. So he's saying you are giving them the same religion. No, that is not what the FBI was saying. That's what this guy is saying. Marquett, Burton. But that's not what the FBI was saying. The FBI had a problem with him. As they said, personally, I believe, in the light of King's powerful demagogic speech yesterday, he stands head and shoulders above all other Negro leaders put together when it comes to influencing great masses of Negroes. The key is influencing them to do what? That's what we'll deal with in our series, but we're going to talk about a little bit today. We must mark him now. If we have not done so before, as the most dangerous Negro of the future in this nation, from the standpoint of communism, the Negro, and national security. He is an enemy to the power structure. And what this clown talking about? Nothing.
It's that weakness in you, Martin. That's what we love, Martin. You're one of us, and we will honor you. Yes, we, the white power structure, we will honor you. And I'll tell you why, Martin, because we can use your image to keep the blacks docile and weak. We will use you, Martin. So even in your death, we will keep you alive and give a holiday, Martin, because we can use you. We've been using you for hundreds of years. We're good at it, goddammit. Now, this Malcolm X guy. No holiday for him. And when we go through Black History Month, we're going to talk about blacks who are not of action. They like to talk speeches, and they like to sit on their ass.
Just like him. Just like him. Look at him. Get a good look at him. That's what he like to do. He behind that mic talking about who need to take on a power structure and not be docile. What he doing? He have nothing. And Martin is going to address this. And I played him first so you can think of him once Martin break down his ideology, break it down to pieces. See who make more sense. Now let's go to Martin.
Speak. Civil Rights, King, Van Oker, roll 20, sound 36.
This is May 1967. Just a few years after the FBI argued we must mark Martin now. If we have not done so before, as the most dangerous Negro in the future of this nation. He was dangerous. And the reason why you just can't bury him because of his influence, resurrecting the struggle of our ancestors after the Civil War. You got to understand this context to understand him. What schools have done in sanitizing Martin is that they removed him from his context. If you want to know about Martin, you have to read his books, just not listening to a bunch of excerpts and a few speeches. You have to understand his context. He's arguing from the 1860s civil rights that was pushed by our ancestors and the abolitionists. Civil rights doesn't necessarily mean you, and I'm explaining this to you as you hear him talk. He's going to talk about full citizen rights. The uninformed believe Martin is just talking about sitting at the lunch counter with somebody, sit next to him at the lunch counter, or riding elbow to elbow, or just on a bus, or sitting with them in the same restroom. That's not what he's talking about when he's talking about full citizen rights. See, full citizen rights entails this. It's the undergirding is the argument based on the Constitution. If the so-called Negro want justice, he must have political power. We were deprived of political power for several hundred years in this country. Our ancestors fought. They crushed the slavocracy, and they began to build allies with other ethnicities. And it was them who began to open up the doorway to put in legislation the right of the so-called Negro here in this Western Hemisphere in America to have political power. So what you're reading here, full citizen rights, is going to the Constitution. If you are a full citizen, you have full rights of suffrage. You can enter into the democratic process. Now you can make some noise. It wasn't about no lunch counter. But since people think of citizen rights or civil rights and they see all of the videos, they just associate civil rights with sitting at a lunch counter, riding the same bus. No. Civil or citizen rights has to do with gaining access to political power. Now listen to what he's arguing here with that background. He's not talking about just stand there and get hit. He's talking about tactics and methods to achieve liberation, justice, and equity for everyone. Not just stand there and get hit, right? But he will also describe his moral convictions. But his moral convictions is in context of the practicality of effective revolutionary tactic. Listen to him.
Dr. King, this church is as good a place as any to go back over your commitment to the civil rights movement. When you went out from here into university and then you went to Montgomery, Alabama and started the bus boycotts there, what was the philosophy of the civil rights movement as you saw it then, more than 10 years ago?
Well, I would say then the philosophy was that we must go all out to use legal and nonviolent methods to gain full citizenship rights for the Negro people of our country. Now, of course, that particular struggle and that philosophy centered on breaking down all of the barriers of legal segregation. So I would say that in that period, the basic thrust for the gaining of citizenship rights for Negroes was to end the humiliation surrounding the whole system of legal segregation.
He wanted to end the humiliation, and he wanted to remove legal segregation. This is a part of citizen rights. The removal of the segregation was just a feature of the citizen rights. The citizen rights has to do with the right to have political access. And this is why it eventually led into suffrage or voting, in which Martin says that our power is only partially realized. You see, it's not just segregation for the point to sit next to people. Segregation was just an aspect to tear that down, to tear down Jim Crow. Because one thing with Jim Crow, it was also hindering the so-called African American from their access to political power. That is the democratic process.
Dr. King, was there something peculiar to the place where you started and the kind of people you attracted? I mean by that, there was a strong attachment on the part of your parishioners in Montgomery to the church. They were older people, weren't they?
Yes, I would say by and large they were older people who participated in the boycott because they were the ones using the bus more than anybody else. And Montgomery was a community predominantly church-centered, so that it was very easy to get to the vast majority of Negroes because they were in some way connected with a church in the community.
Was there, in addition to your commitment to the idea of nonviolence, wasn't it also the only thing you could do, the white community having the monopoly on violence, that if you had tried violence, they would have met it with violence? It was the only device open to you, wasn't it?
Well, I'll put it another way, that morally, I was led to nonviolence because I felt that it was the best moral way to deal with the problem. We were seeking to establish a just society.
Now listen to what he's saying. Nonviolence in the context to address the white power structure. Now he's saying first and foremost, him personally, it was moral. But that's not it alone. But it's not just to stand there and get hit. It's a part of an action or a movement to challenge the power structure. Listen carefully.
And it was my feeling then, and it is my feeling now, that violence is certainly much more socially destructive, and it creates many more social problems than it solves. So I was led to nonviolence for deep moral reasons. Now, there is no doubt about the fact that...
And understand the depth of his moral reasoning. Violence causes more problems, more deaths, more killing of babies, more killing of women, more killing of the innocent. So when he's saying morally, okay, don't get hung up with the traditional idea of Western Christianity. He's just talking about the disaster and the problem that it will cause. He said it will create more problems than it will solve. So his idea of morals should be taken a little bit deeper than what people display today. But notice what else he says about this. And remember, this is in a context. This is in the context of challenging the power structure.
Our struggle in Montgomery and all over the United States for that matter, nonviolence is also practically sound. It would just be impractical for the Negro to turn to violence. He has neither the instruments nor the techniques of violence.
He don't have the instruments. In other words, you don't have the weaponry. You don't manufacture no bullets. You don't have access to the weapons. Neither do you have the technique. Now, what the hell is he talking about?
Amy
This
came
dude
right
here.
back and he said,
Now, who you gonna listen
blacks
to?
defend degenerates as long as
You
they
gonna
are
listen to
Know
him?
that because
Look at it. Look at him. That's the one. He have no movement going on. He's not doing nothing to organize the people. He's just sitting behind a mic talking rhetoric. Is he putting his life on the line for the liberation struggle? Or is he, Marquett Burton, Devon Burton, or is he trying to assimilate into what he calls the white power structure? Maybe he's trying to assimilate into it in his capitalist endeavors. That's another subject too. You hear me? Let's go back to Martin, what he's explaining. He
That if
said
you
it's
had tried violence, they would
not,
have met it with violence.
he said it's not practically sound. So he's going to give his moral reasoning. Now he's going to get into the practicality of it.
Socially, it was the best in some way connected with a church in the community.
Sir, in addition to your commitment to the idea of nonviolence, wasn't it also the only thing you could do, the white community having the monopoly on violence, that if you had tried violence, they would have met it with violence? It was the only device open to you, wasn't it?
Well, I'll put it another way, that morally, I was led to nonviolence because I felt that it was the best moral way to deal with the problem. We were seeking to establish a just society. And it was my feeling then, and it is my feeling now, that violence is certainly much more socially destructive, and it creates many more social problems than it solves. So I was led to nonviolence for deep moral reasons. Now, there is no doubt about the fact that in our struggle in Montgomery and all over the United States for that matter, nonviolence is also practically sound. It would just be impractical for the Negro to turn to violence. He has neither the instruments nor the techniques of violence. We're about 10 or 11% of the total population of the nation, and I would say we're about 1/10 of the firepower. So it would just be totally impractical and unwise and unrealistic for the Negro to think of violence. Well, I saw this in the beginning in Montgomery, but this wasn't the basic reason that I turned to nonviolence and that I believed in it as a philosophy. I turned to it because I felt that it was the morally excellent way to deal with the problem of racial injustice in our country.
Morally perfect, excellent way, because he do not want a bunch of casualties. You understand? It's not just morally because, hey, I love you and you spit on me. No, he's explaining the whole idea. He's not just looking within himself. He's talking about how it will be totally destructive socially. But that's another subject. Now, what he's saying, this interview was 1967. 1963, regardless on what the rhetoric that Marquett was talking, we read the memorandum, August 30th, 1963, from Belmont, or to Belmont from Sullivan, from Mr. W.C. Sullivan, when he was addressing Martin and influences. Personally, I believe in the light of King's powerful demagogic speech yesterday, he stands head and shoulders over all other Negro leaders put together when it comes to influencing great masses of Negroes. We must mark him now, if we have not done so before, as the most dangerous Negro to the future of this nation, from the standpoint of communism, the Negro, and national security. He seen the radical they understood the radical nature in which Martin was turning to. He said, we got to mark it now. We're going to have more, God willing. We're going to be coming back with more of the FBI files, because the FBI files is associating Martin with the Negro question. And a lot of people probably never heard of the Negro question, but we will discuss that in segments coming up to it, because it's going to involve a whole lot of historical politics, which is necessary for us today. Now, he said it's not practically sound. Now, I'm going to read something else to you. And where are these men today? Where did all of the people go who was talking about violence? What happened to them? What happened to all of the folks who was talking about violence? Let me show you something about violence. There's something about violence that I want you to take some consideration into. And this is what I had made mention to you before. Guerrilla warfare advocates in the United States. May 5th, 1968, report by the Committee on Un-American Activities, House of Representatives, 19th Congress, second session. So this is a year after Martin was killed or assassinated. Now, have you ever heard of the guerrilla warfare advocates in the United? You can get this document, download. This is from the, like I say, the 19th Congress, second session. The report by the Committee on Un-American Activities of the House of Representatives. Anyone ever look it up? See, I'm not here to talk to you about rhetoric. I'm talking about real life, actual political agenda, real life, actual political, on the ground, real life stuff. What did this document describe? They were ready, because that's their strength. What do you mean, Brother Judah? They were ready. I want to go to chapter 6. Wait. No, I want to go to chapter 10 in this document. You could download this document, it's online. Guerrilla warfare advocates in the United States. This is the 5th month of 1968, which would be May. And this is the Committee on Un-American Activities. Now watch how they had this all planned out now. All of these people running around talking about some gun. What Malcolm do? Malcolm wasn't going to do nothing. You know, and we're going to address this. Why? Because this is a deeper psychology. We're going to talk about this whole violence thing. The mass majority of the population, brothers and sisters, comrades, the vast majority of the population are not quick to shed blood. It's found in the psychological analysis in the military. The vast majority of the people in the military have to be trained or coerced into shedding blood when they find out that it's only a small group who's psychotic enough to just have no problem with shedding blood. The vast majority of the global population are not bloodshedders, whether you believe it or not. It's this small group that makes it seem like it's a bunch. So we're going to look at the guerrilla, and they understood this too. You see, and that's what Martin was arguing, that we must be politically educated. We must know the same things they know and even more. Chapter 10, conclusion. And they're addressing, just in case any Negro wanted to begin to go on a race riot or a race guerrilla war. So that's what they were talking about. Guerrilla fighters in the ghettos and in the rural country. It says, if a guerrilla war were initiated from the ghettos of our major cities calling for black liberation, it would necessarily entail a stated time, and again, by the revolutionaries quoted in this study, a racial civil war in which black revolutionaries will attempt guerrilla war against the white population and the existing government. So they're talking about this in 1968. And This is what happens when you study and you understand and do social sciences opposed to a bunch of mad people who's just emotional. Notice their analysis carefully. The concept of black guerrilla fighters working outside of the ghetto is only conceivable in the South, where there is a large rural Negro population into which they could blend. And even there, the issue of race would limit the potential of the revolutionaries. They let you know already. This is their committee talking. This isn't a novel. This is what they're talking about among themselves. They know that a race war would be so counterproductive and undermining the revolutionary idea because it will limit the so-called black revolutionaries in the South. They can only blend in with black people. And so therefore, this would be a limitation or a potential problem to black revolutionaries. So they're analyzing that. Other than with other guerrillas, when people waged guerrilla warfare, they became a friend of all of the people. Well, if you're isolating it to just black people, you're already cutting yourself down by the knees anyway, because it's not well thought out. Martin thought it out. All of the rest of these loudmouths, you get this loudmouth, Stokely Carmichael, and all of them. What of them? What became of them? And they lived. They wasn't assassinated. What did they do since they were sitting up here talking, beating their chests? More accomplishments came through the tactic of Martin and his companions. And we're going to look into the future, or we're going to look into other writings to show you who his companions were. It wasn't just the people who was a part of the church and the civil rights movies you see is just all church people. No. He had other companions. And that's why the FBI was writing about it. That's why the FBI was writing about it. Because he had other companions. And they didn't mention no church people. So first, all of this violent talk, beating your chest, they got it all planned out. We already know if they're going to wage warfare in the ghetto, they're going to address the ghetto shortly. If they try to do it in the South, won't last long. Because racial limitations is going to catch them up. In the first place, the concept of violence and guerrilla warfare is alien to both the American mentality and to the vast majority of Negroes in the ghettos. It's not just Negroes, but it was the vast majority of the American population. There's been a psychoanalysis on this. Most people are not violent prone. That's something else they have against them. In other words, the House of Representatives and this committee is breaking down their disadvantages and showing how small and minute they will be in number if they ever tried a violent act. Let me go further with this. Notice this. Page 58. In the second place, the ghetto could be isolated and the guerrillas effectively bottled up, thereby cutting them off from supplies and support. In the third place, the very nature of a conflict between black and white effectively precludes the black revolutionary from using the concept of integration into the community. That's what guerrilla warriors do. They integrate into the community. So all of these black revolutionaries, and they just talking about black revolutionaries, they haven't thought it out. The FBI did. Martin did too. All scientific socialists and scientific social scientists, you think it out. Yes, you at a disadvantage. First, you just saying it's a black against white. You limiting your guerrilla warfare because you can't enter into the community because you got white people in there too. Now, if you was to befriend all whites and Asians and organize all of them, it'd be more of a threat. But since it's just black, the concept of the guerrilla warfare to integrate into the community is being undermined by black guerrillas. All you talking about some race war. You're foolish. And that's all you're going to do is talk about it. Martin had more an effective plan because it really wasn't his plan. It was something he was learning from others. In the third place, the very nature of conflict between black and white effectively precludes the black revolutionary from using the concept of integration in the community as a propaganda issue and as a protection from detection. You won't be able to blend in, sir, because you're excluding whites. You're going to lose. We're going to corner you off. We're going to bottle you up. We're going to cut off supplies, and we're going to crush you. And watch how they're going to talk about this now. See, they're talking about the strategy. First, they're explaining how they're at a disadvantage. 2, the strategy is to bottle them up in the ghetto. Watch this. Guerrilla warfare is envisioned by its proponents at this stage will have to have its base in the ghetto. This being the case, the ghetto would have to be sealed off from the rest of the city. Police, state troopers, and the National Guard will adequately handle this chore. And if they need help, the regular army will be brought into service. Remember Martin said, you outmanned. You don't have the ammunition nor the skill. What damn fool is sitting up here talking about picking up some guns? You want to sit up here, this clown gonna sit up here and talking about how Malcolm was more of a threat than Martin. No, he wasn't. Martin, as they said in their own documents, he said, we must mark him now, if we have not done so before, as the most dangerous Negro in the future of this nation. Bar none. And once you study the tactic and who was training him, and that's why they got him under the Communist Party USA Negro question. This is a history behind here. This is a history that the school book's not telling you about. And foolish people like this getting on there with a bunch of rhetoric talking about, well, they made a holiday after him, so he was a part of the white power structure. That's damn foolery. Okay. Once the ghetto is sealed off, and depending upon the violence being perpetrated by the guerrillas, the following actions could be taken by the authorities. A curfew would be imposed in the enclosed, isolated area. No one would be allowed out of or into the area after sundown. This is before the House of Representatives, the 19th Congress. It was all planned out. Curfews. You can't enter because they're bottling it off. But I want to get to something very interesting. So you would know how they was, once they bottled you off, how they was ready to finish this. During the night, the authorities would not only patrol the boundary lines, but would also attempt to control the streets and, if necessary, send out foot patrols through the entire area. If the guerrillas attempted to either break out of the area or to engage the authorities in open combat, they would be readily suppressed. Now watch this. During a guerrilla uprising, most civil liberties would have to be suspended. You want to come out here and wage a war? Civil liberties, most of them suspended. That means they're going to gun you down. And they won't even have to go to court. Won't even be a court case. During the guerrilla uprising, most civil liberties will have to be suspended search and seizure operations would be instituted during the daylight hours, and anyone found armed or without proper identification would immediately be arrested. Most of the people of the ghetto would not be involved in the guerrilla operation, and under conditions of police and military control, some would help in ferreting out the guerrillas. The population within the ghetto would be exhorted to work with the authorities and to report both on guerrillas and any suspicious activity they might note. The police agencies would be in a position to make immediate arrest without warrants, no warrants, civil liberties being suspended, under suspicion of guarantees usually provided by the Constitution. You don't need no warrant. You have no rights according to the Constitution. You pick up a gun. What have you become? Acts of overt violence by the guerrillas would mean. This is what the Congress talking about. 1968. They pick up guns. What would this mean? It would mean that they had declared a state of war within the country and therefore would forfeit their rights as in wartime. The McCarran Act provides for various detention centers to be operated throughout the country, and these might well be utilized for the temporary imprisonment of warring guerrillas. Imprisonment and what else? Gunning you down. You're going to either be arrested or gunned down. And they're letting you know they already had this is quick work for us. They're not going to have the support of all black people. They already alienated themselves from white people. They don't have the guns. They don't have the artillery. They don't have the supplies. We're going to block off the ghetto where they won't even get supplies in. And what these Negroes talking about? Bear with me 1 second. 1 second. Bear with me.
Speak. Civil Rights, King, Van Oker, roll 20, sound 36. Stanley.
Dr. King, this church is as good a place as any to go back over your commitment to the civil rights movement. When you went out from here into university and then you went to Montgomery, Alabama and started the bus boycotts there, what was the philosophy of the civil rights movement as you saw it then, more than 10 years ago?
Well, I would say then the philosophy was that we must go all out to use legal and nonviolent methods to gain full citizenship rights for the Negro people of our country. Of course, that particular struggle and that philosophy centered on breaking down all of the barriers of legal segregation. So I would say that in that period, the basic thrust for the gaining of citizenship rights for Negroes was to end the humiliation surrounding the whole system of legal segregation.
Dr. King, was there something peculiar to the place where you started and the kind of people you attracted? I mean by that, there was a strong attachment on the part of your parishioners in Montgomery to the church. They were older people, weren't they?
Yes, I would say by and large they were older people who participated in the boycott because they were the ones using the bus more than anybody else. And Montgomery was a community predominantly church-centered, so that it was very easy to get to the vast majority of Negroes because they were in some way connected with a church in the community.
Was there, in addition to your commitment to the idea of nonviolence, wasn't it also the only thing you could do, the white community having the monopoly on violence, that if you had tried violence, they would have met it with violence? It was the only device open to you, wasn't it?
Well, I'll put it another way, that morally, I was led to nonviolence because I felt that it was the best moral way to deal with the problem. We were seeking to establish a just society. And it was my feeling then, and it is my feeling now, that violence is certainly much more socially destructive, and it creates many more social problems than it solves. So I was led to nonviolence for deep moral reasons. Now, there is no doubt about the fact that in our struggle in Montgomery and all over the United States for that matter, nonviolence is also practically sound. It would just be impractical for the Negro to turn to violence. He has neither the instruments nor the techniques of violence. We are about 10 or 11% of the total population of the nation, and I would say we're about 1/10 of the firepower. So it would just be totally impractical and unwise and unrealistic for the Negro to think of violence. Well, I saw this in the beginning in Montgomery, but this was
I'm sorry. We're going to continue with more of our. Hold on. Okay. With more of our discussion on MLK, we're going to show more of his political agenda. We're going to examine more of the FBI files that has been released so we can understand MLK political agenda. So right now, what I would like to do, I want to go into Why We Can't Wait, a text that he wrote. And he says, it is an axiom of social change that no revolution can take place without a methodology suited to the circumstances of the period. During the 50s, many voices offered substitutes for the tactic of legal recourse. Now, if you read Why We Can't Wait, Martin wasn't talking about a one thing fits all. It was a conglomerate of tactics that will lead to liberation. So if you're going to protest and you're going to shut down businesses, you don't want people fighting because it's going to cause problems. Now, along with protests to shut down businesses, which is one of the most effective aspects of revolutionary struggle, he have legal recourse. So he's going to show that some people just depended totally on legal recourse, but it's not one size fits all. It's just a part of a tactic. He says some called for colossal bloodbath to cleanse the nation's ills. To support their advocacy of violence and its incitement, they pointed to an historical tradition reaching back from the American Civil War to Spartacus and Rome. But the Negro in the South in 1955, assessing the power of the focus arrayed against him, could not perceive the slightest prospect of victory in this approach. So here again, so in 1967, he said it in an interview. Now we're looking at Why We Can't Wait, and he's addressing this back in the late 50s, early 60s. He said, assessing the power, we couldn't perceive the slightest prospect of victory in this approach. He was unarmed. Speaking of the black people, why it was impractical? Because most did not have the technique or the instruments of war. So he was unarmed, unorganized, untrained, disunited, and most important, psychologically and morally unprepared for the deliberate spilling of blood. Now, this man, MLK, they call him a prodigy, but his intelligence, I mean, some of the books and the things he quotes, it was said that even when he was in church, people didn't really latch on to him when he gave a sermon because it was so intellectual like. Okay, when you're reading what he just described, psychologically and morally unprepared for deliberate spilling of blood. This is literally something the military and the armed forces must prepare people who join the military. They must prepare them for that because the vast majority are not prepared, neither willing to shed blood. So it's not that you're a coward, it's something inside the person where they just not to kill another human. You got to be pushed to do that for the vast majority of the people. Then you have a few who will do it no problem. A lot of them psychotic. But when we're looking at this, he's looking at the psychological aspect. It's not nothing just inherent for the Negro. He's just assessing the Negro at this time, or black people. But this was something that the FBI said about the entire American, or the House of Representatives. This is what they said about the entire American population. They said they're not, in the document that we read, it says guerrilla warfare is alien to both the American mentality. This whole idea of spilling blood is alien. You have to force people into doing this. You have to train people into doing this. So Martin was absolutely correct. And if you study it, you will find that he was correct, psychologically nor morally, right? They're psychologically and morally unprepared for the deliberate spilling of blood. Even if they were, they still had the odds against them. Although his desperation had prepared him, speaking of the black man and black woman, although his desperation had prepared him with the courage to die for freedom if necessary, he was not willing to commit himself to racial suicide with no prospect of victory. A methodology and philosophy of revolution is neither born nor accepted overnight. From the moment it emerges, it is subject to rigorous tests, opposition, scorn, and prejudice. The old guard in any society resents new methods. For old guards wear the decorations and medals won by waging battle in the accepted manner. Often opposition comes not only from the conservatives who cling to tradition, but this is what we want, but also from the extremist militants who favor neither the old or new. Many of these extremists misread the significance and intent of non-violence. Just like this guy, and this guy isn't even this guy
And he
here.
came right back and he said, blacks
The white power structure.
Yeah, this guy
Yes,
here.
I'm about to blow your mind. Everyone pay attention. You see,
guy
we
here.
know Martin Luther King was a friend of the government. He was absorbed and co-opted into the white power structure.
Even though the FBI said he was the most dangerous Negro and a threat to national security, this clown, he's sitting up here talking about he was absorbed into it.
We know that because the government celebrates him.
And that's how he know it. Not from them documentations, not from anything like that, but because the government celebrates him. And he called himself intelligent. And people follow him like he really got his head on right. This is a classical clown. And at the end of the day, he's full of rhetoric. So when we're looking at the idea and the thought behind it, this guy here, he isn't even a militant extremist. He's not doing nothing, but trying to make some money. He's, as I said before, he's trying to join into the power structure. So he don't even count. Martin is talking about many of these extremists misread the significance and intent of nonviolence, just like they do today. And many people misread it, and they're not even extremists. Martin gonna call them out in a few minutes because they failed to perceive that militancy is also the father of the nonviolent way. You know, it really takes more courage to do what Martin was doing. Angry exhortation from street corners. Look, listen to what he's saying. Angry exhortation from street corners and steering calls for the Negro or stirring calls for the Negro to arm and go forth to do battle stimulate loud applause. But when the applause dies, the stirred return to their homes. Is he lying? After they finish giving you a round of applause and yeah, fight, what happens? When people get hungry, tired, sleepy, they go back home. Martin called them out a long time ago. Y'all a bunch of people full of rhetoric, talk, no strategy. He said they failed to perceive. In other words, you're foolish and in some senses idiots and stupid in some cases. After the applause, they all go home. They all go home. So they could talk about Martin all they want to. At the end of the day, they go home. Malcolm had no army behind him. None. So you let the media and all of them push him out in front all you want to. What did Malcolm accomplish? Malcolm was beginning to learn from Palo Pinto. And they cut Malcolm down when he was beginning to break himself free from that old dogma of the Nation of Islam. He began to learn more. But what exactly did he accomplish? All of the rights and gains that people are able to exercise today came from who? Our fallen ancestors who ran on the same ticket that Martin was running on. Political power. Marquett, Burton not talking about political power. Umar Johnson, they don't know how to get us political power. They're hustlers. And they use the backwardness of the people against them. And after that, they all go home. You think Umar Johnson was another Martin? You don't know nothing about Martin. Umar Johnson is nowhere close to the men he called out. He is nowhere close to a Amilcar Cabral. He's nowhere close to a Thomas Sankara. He's nowhere close to a Kwame Nkrumah. He's nowhere close to a Maurice Bishop. None. Because we study these men in our classes. We know that these men are full of rhetoric. But that's what we do, study. And a lot of people don't like study. They like sensationalism. Martin argues, wait a minute. He said, angry exhortation from the street corners and stirring calls for the Negro to arm and go forth to do battle, stimulate loud applause. But when the applause dies, the stirred return to their homes and lie in their beds for still one more night with no progress in view. Is he lying? With these so-called supporters of armed struggle, what have they accomplished? No progress in view. They cannot solve the problem they face because they offered no challenge, but only to call to arms. It takes intelligence for revolution. It takes study for revolution. Mao and the rest of them argue before you pick up a gun, you got to pick up a study book. Kwame Nkrumah, when they wanted to put him back in power, he handed his students books. Then you know tactic and how to apply. That's why we argue we the biblical school of global liberation for all oppressed people. Ain't got time for all this emotional rhetoric, man. All this fluff. What happens after the fluff? They lie down in their beds for still one more night with no progress in view. They cannot solve the problem they face because they offered no challenge but only a call to arms, which they themselves are unwilling to lead, knowing that doom will be its
And he
reward.
came right back and he said,
Since the call of arms was a big thing for Malcolm and he was a threat, what about you, sir? What you gonna do? What you gonna do, Mr. Marquett? Huh? Nothing. But try to make some money off of people. A call to arms is all they can offer. They cannot solve the problem because they do not reach and move into sustained action. The large groups of people necessary to attract attention and convey the determination of the majority. How do you convey the determination of the majority? Teaching, motivating through instruction and guidance, making it plain how the political scene is, how the political playing field is, and how to approach it, what weaponry and what tactic to use, and how we have a positive projection of victory. If you can't convey that, they not fine that doing that with a call of arms. And he said they themselves are
and he
unwilling
came
to
right
lead.
back and
You
he
think
said,
him? Look at him. Look at him. Look at him. Just look at him. You think he not even willing to do what he's so-called bragging Martin was, or what Malcolm was doing. He not even willing. Look at him. If he was, you should have been doing it, sir. They cannot solve the problem because they do not reach and move into sustained action. The large groups of people necessary to attract attention and convey the determination of the majority. The conservatives say, let us not move so fast. The extremists who say, let us go out and whip the world, would tell you that they are as far apart as poles. They say, no, we're not the same as the conservatives. But Martin says, but there is a striking parallel. They accomplish nothing, for they do not reach the people who have a crying need to be free. They accomplish nothing. And his words ring true to this day. They accomplish nothing. Now we're going to get ready to close for today's session. I'm going to play a little bit more. Bear with me a moment. I got to run and do something before we close out. So I want to play a little bit more old Martin.
Swing, Civil Rights, King, Van Oker, roll 20, sound 36. Stanley.
Dr. King, this church is as good a place as any to go back over your commitment to the civil rights movement. When you went out from here into university and then you went to Montgomery, Alabama and started the bus boycotts there, what was the philosophy of the civil rights movement as you saw it then, more than 10 years ago?
Well, I would say then the philosophy was that we must go all out to use legal and nonviolent methods to gain full citizenship rights for the Negro people of our country. Of course, that particular struggle and that philosophy centered on breaking down all of the barriers of legal segregation. So I would say that in that period, the basic thrust for the gaining of citizenship rights for Negroes was to end the humiliation surrounding the whole system of legal segregation.
Segregation. To gain again full citizen rights is to have access to political power. It's not about sitting on the same toilet or sitting in the same lunch counter. That's not what it's about. Access to political power. He argues about it in all of his writings, which a lot of people don't even know. Martin wrote books. He wrote several books. And most high willing, we're going to be addressing them on the Vanguard, the NMP Vanguard channel, to raise political awareness and also hopefully I know that well, it appears to me that the YouTube, we're not YouTubers. You know, we have other things going on. We're not streamers per se. So I know it's a lot of work going into being a streamer. So I'm not really sure whether it is our inactivity where we're not on all of the time, or is it the algorithm, or both, where it seemed like no sooner than we get subscribers, for some reason they're removed. You know, people will get notices and then they don't get them no more. I don't know what that's about, but nevertheless, we're going to keep pushing. And for those of you who are able to hear it, reach out. And if you want to learn more or begin to be active towards a movement, not just for Black people, not just for white people, for all of the toilers in the working class of the world. And full disclosure, as I said before, the Nazarene Messianic Party, we use the Bible, but we're not religious in the traditional sense. We don't look at the Bible and get into all this religious dogma like you see these people who crowd in their assemblies on Sundays and all of this going off to heaven one day. No. But with that, we're going to close for today's session. This was a little longer today because I wanted to bring some stuff out with Martin, but we want to follow up with the FBI files. We want to get into more of just politics so we can understand what we're dealing with, from the Constitution to the political affairs that's going on in the nation and around the world. So I would like to say that we're going to close for today's session again, and hopefully that the people who's listening will tune in with us again. Also tell other people about it and probably reach out to us for more dialogue and also inquiry about the NMP Vanguard School. All right. So we're going to close out, and we also want to post this for a moment where you can visit the nmp.org to learn more about what we're teaching and what we're dealing with. And if you go there, you can find out more info, and you can also reach out to us as well. So again, we appreciate the time, and we hope to come back again to address more issues. And I'll see how long this is up, because it's like I said, we really just starting this channel off for the most part, working on it again. But I've heard that the guy Marquett normally send out strikes for using some of his footage, because a lot of people have found out he's just a scammer. But maybe we're so insignificant that he really won't pay no attention to it. But nevertheless, whatever it is, what we want to do is present the truth of the matter and get away from rhetoric. And with that, Most High willing, we'll meet again